Welcome to the Slice Gear, how to hit a high drop. Here we're going to talk about the fundamental building blocks that we really need to cover to make sure that we're securing that slice and giving us the best chance of hitting that drop. So first off, we're going to talk about our address position. There's a couple of simple things that we need to do each and every time to make sure our address is exactly what we need to cure that slice. I'm going to follow up on that grip. There's a number of different ways of looking at the grip and making sure that it's strong enough to hit a draw, and we'll give you a number of tips there too. Following that, we're going to talk again about powering our golf swing. We talked at length about the fundamentals of effortless power, of how to make sure we're getting the most distance out of our swing, but there's a number of things that we can cover specifically to slice cure to make sure that we increase the chances of hitting that draw. And then next off, we're going to talk in detail about the release of the swing, how we release the club through impact. Having that proper release is such an important component of curing that slice. And then finally, we're going to talk about the shape of our swing. This is where it all comes together, where we make sure that we're not too flat or too steep or too much around our body or too much in front of our body. It's our swing plane and the shape of our swing that really makes all the difference in curing that slice. So, we've got the building blocks of the slice cure, how to hit a high drop. Let's get to it. Okay. So in the address position, there's a number of key things that we need to focus on to make sure that we're increasing the chances of hitting that draw. And those two things are our ball position and having square shoulders. Now, when it comes to ball position, we talked about the fact that we want to make sure that we're coming from the inside as much as possible, that the ball's at the bottom of our swing right in front of us. So therefore, the ball position that we want to focus on is having it right in the middle of our stance, right in between our two heels. So from now on, particularly when you're starting with your short and your medium irons, just make sure that that ball position is right in the middle of your stance. And the second thing that we're going to work on, specifically with our address, is to make sure that we have square shoulders. As we've talked before, having open shoulders is one of the key ingredients to having a slice, and getting those shoulders square is an imperative fix to make sure that we're increasing the chances of hitting those draws. So, simply speaking, this is the square shoulder drill. Let's go to the drill. So here we are demonstrating the square shoulder drill. And to start off, I'm showing another drill, whereas if you grab the grip beforehand and then lower your hands down, you often will be pointing very left of the target. So the opposite of that is we want to square our shoulders first off. So before we take our grip, we make sure our shoulders are nice and square. Then we'll take our grip, which will also make sure our forearms are nice and square, and then all of our upper body will be nice and square to the target. So again, set your shoulders in place first, make sure that they're nice and square to the target, then drop your hands down straight below you, and then everything else be nice and square, and then you're ready to swing from the inside and cure that slice. Okay, so the grip is such a fundamental ingredient in the slice cure. If you have the wrong grip, if it's too weak, it's almost impossible to square up your club face adequately. Whereas if you have a grip that's just strong enough, you're always going to have that chance to be nice and square or even slightly close that club face, which at impact, which will help you hit that draw spin. So let's talk about, generally speaking, what the grip is. So when you grip your club, a nice and neutral and balanced position is going to be where your hands are together and the palms are facing each other and pretty much pointing straight up and down like at 12 o'clock. And then, so what that do is that when you grip it, basically everything will be neutral and balanced. What a stronger grip is that when you rotate, instead of from 12 o'clock, a little bit more towards 1 or 2 o'clock, and what that'll do is that when you grip the club, it's going to have the two sets of lines in between your thumbs and forefingers pointing more to the right, to your ear, to your right shoulder. So that's a static way of looking at the grip. But what I want to do is give you a dynamic way that really shows you how your grip will function when you're actually going through impact. So what we're going to do is go back to the tabletop drill and just go into a backswing here. And imagine that we're looking with our straight left arm and our flat left wrist, and we're comparing that flat wrist to the leading edge of our club face. So as you can see, they're both pretty much flat at the same position, and this is what we're going to be calling a neutral grip. So do this as a drill to totally drop that toe all the way down and then go back into impact now. You'll see that your club face is completely open at that position. And the opposite of that is to go back to that same position and go toe up. Okay, so you're going to strengthen that toe, you're going to put it pointing in the air, and now go back into your, do a slow motion swing, and you're going to see just how square and how closed that face is going through impact. And that's the key here, is that we want to make sure that we're just strong enough, but strong enough in a dynamic way so that you're going to be either square or just slightly close going through impact each and every time and never open. So this is, again, a great tabletop drill about strengthening it and just looking at it from a dynamic point of view. And I want to show you one other way to have a look to make sure that you have a strong grip. So let's go to that drill. So here I am working on my strength of my grip with the straight left arm and club shaft drill. So when I place the club down, I make sure that the club face is completely square to the target. Then I'll lean the shaft forward so that's completely in line with my left arm. So again, straight left arm along the club shaft. And then what I'll do is I'll go into my backswing and just check to see how strong that grip is. So again, square club face, straight left arm and shaft. And then I'll check the strength of it. So I can do that toe up maneuver if I want to. So this is just one other key to make sure that your grip is strong enough. The straight left arm and club shaft drill really makes a big difference. So the next building block for slice cure that we're going to work on is how we power our golf swing. Now, we talked at length about how to have effortless power in our DVD on the fundamentals of effortless power. And we really want to make sure that we're keying on a couple of main ingredients here on the slice cure. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that when you're swinging within yourself or swinging at speed 6 out of 10. Because what that does is it really helps make sure that we have the chance to release our hands through impact. If you're pulling super hard with all of your full force, your hands are always going to be really far ahead of your body at impact, and that's a very difficult position to square your club face and release your hands. And then the following thing that we want to focus on is just making sure that we're swinging in a consistent and balanced finish. So our follow through and finish, we hold that position and we make sure that every single time it's repeatable, it's consistent, and we're swinging well within ourselves. So we've got a simple drill where it's just a wedge 3-wood drill. We're basically going to go from wedge to 3-wood over and over again and just make sure that we're making the exact same swing, because we're always going to be swinging within ourselves and we're always going to be making sure that we're holding that finish and releasing through impact. So let's go to the drill. So here we are doing the wedge 3-wood drill. Now the key here is that we're really working on the consistency of how we're powering our swing. So that what we'll do is we'll make a practice swing and then hit a wedge shot. So clearly with our pitching wedge, we're swinging well within ourselves. And then what we'll simply do is switch over to our 3-wood with the exact same state of mind. So we're going to be focusing on making a nice swing within ourselves, swing speed 6 out of 10. We're going to be having a nice release and balance through into our follow through, and then holding that finish each and every time. So the real key here is just to make sure that you're having the same sort of feeling all the way through your bag from your wedges to your woods. So nice and smooth and controlled with your wedges, and nice and smooth and controlled with your woods as well. And again, all this time we're working on consistency, we're working on the feeling that we're making with our clubs. We want to just make sure that we're powering our swing the same each and every time. It's a very, very useful drill. Okay, so the next building block of our slice cure is the release. And the release is one thing that if you did everything else in the slice cure but don't release the club properly, you're not going to cure that slice. Because we have to get that fundamental toe crossing the heel to make sure that we're releasing through the impact, going from open to close, to make sure that we're releasing properly. Now, the history behind this is that many beginning golfers have that incredibly tight grip pressure. They really grip down on hard. And so that when they make their swing, there's no looseness here, so it doesn't release, it basically stays firm all the way through impact. And so the opposite of that is going to be to have very light grip pressure, particularly in our right hand, to make sure that this releases automatically. So the step one of our release is to make sure that we have light grip pressure to allow the club to release automatically. The second thing that we want to focus on our release is to make sure that we release through a full 180 degrees. Now what do I mean by that? Well, let's go back to the tabletop drill, and we'll see that during the backswing in the tabletop drill, the club face points completely up, so it's straight up. And then on the follow-through of the tabletop drill, the club points completely down. So we've basically rotated 180 degrees from going up to down. And that's what we want to go through every single release. We want to make sure that in our backswing, we're completely open, and then in our follow-through, we're completely closed. We release through 180 degrees. And then the final building block on our release is to make sure that we release through into right field. So we've talked about that crucial inside to out path. We want to come into the ball, but we want to come from the inside and then right through the ball. So instead of releasing down the line or straight to the target, we want to release to the right to make sure that we're actually chasing the ball into right field, if you will, to give us that best chance once again of hitting that draw spin. So the best way to practice this is just by hitting gentle wedges with, again, those three elements of an automatic release, a full 180-degree rotation, and then hitting into right field. So it's the wedge release drill. Let's get to it. So here I am working on the wedge release drill, and I'm starting off by doing the tabletop drill. So again, that's just to make sure that we're releasing through a full 180 degrees worth of club face being completely open, then being closed. Then the second step of the drill is to shake out that tension in our right hand. So you can see me shake my right wrist. That really makes sure that my grip is tension free. And then the final thing will be to follow through to where that right club is, pointing into right field. So we always want to make sure that instead of following through down the line, we're following through into right field. So again, we're doing the tabletop drill again to make sure that we're going through a full 180 degrees worth of release. We're shaking out the tension out of our right hand, and then we're releasing into right field each and every time. So releasing in the right field is the key to getting that left spin and that draw spin. Okay, our final building block in terms of securing that slice and hitting a high draw is the shape of our swing. Now we talked at length about our swing plane, and I hope that makes sense for you. But one final way that I want to give you an idea on how the upper body and the lower body sync together in the golf swing is basically an analogy of the upper body being a Ferris wheel and the lower body being a merry-go-round. So we've all seen a Ferris wheel, and we know that they rotate around and around this way. And so that's just exactly what our shoulders and our arms do in our swing. You know, if I exaggerate here, we can see that they can move pretty much completely vertically, whereas the opposite of that is a merry-go-round. So if I move just my shoulders against my hips, you know, I'm just turning horizontally, the complete opposite. So we have something vertically turning on top of something that's turning horizontally. Our shoulders on top of our hips. And the key to the slice here is synchronizing those two things properly. We've talked before that the over-the-top move is basically where we get too flat and then go too steep. So we go too flat and then too steep, and the opposite of that would be starting off steeper and going flatter. So I just want to demonstrate that for you one more time before we get into hitting balls, and it's time to cure that slice. So here I am demonstrating the classical over-the-top move. So if you start off your backswing way too flat and then behind you, the only way to get to the ball is by going steep with a downswing. So you go flat and then steep, and that forces you to come across the ball and slice the ball, giving it that dreaded right slice spin. And so that's the move that we don't want. The opposite of that is having a steeper backswing and then a flatter downswing. So you go steep and then flat. What that does is it gives you a perfect angle for coming from the inside, because the flat downswing gives you the best chance of coming from the inside. So that's the draw move we're looking for.